Welcome to Do Not Go Quiet.
Here's the deal. I'm the best there is, plain and simple. And nobody can hang with my stuff.
With Eric Wilson.
There's a big, hairy American winning machine.
Mark Ellis.
What's up?
What's up, brother?
Good to be here.
It's great to have you here, man. So real quick, I got to throw these credits out. If most people are going to know who you are, but if they don't know who you are, sports coordinator, executive producer in some situations,
sure,
right?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
I don't, Jerry Maguire with Tom Cruise, The Waterboy with Adam Sandler, Any Given Sunday with Al Pacino and Jamie Foxx.
Mm-hmm.
The Replacements, Cuba Gooding Jr. in Radio, Miracle with Kurt Russell, McFarlane with Kevin Costner, The Longest Yard with Sandler and the crew, Invincible with Mark Wahlberg, Semi-Pro with Will Ferrell, Amazing Spider-Man, Dark Knight Rises, Woodlawn. The list goes on and on. Thanks for being here, brother.
Man, it's great being here. It's unsanctioned.
Yeah, well,
I didn't want to alert anybody. I didn't know if you could come up with the appearance fee.
Well,
necessary.
That's kind of how I roll, unsanctioned. That's that's why we're in this dark space down here. Like really, nobody,
that's right.
No one really knows what's going on. There's probably a lot of activity,
a lot of stairs to get
happening
down here. I was like, okay, is there going to be somebody around the corner? Like, is there a little hit going on down here? Well, this is great, man. This is great.
They could be. You don't know what's going to happen at the end.
Yeah. No, this is great. This is cool stuff.
Yeah. So you're I got you on a 10-day hiatus between here and New Jersey. What are you shooting up in New Jersey? What are you working on?
We're working with Hulu on the Aaron Hernandez story. And that's been cool. And it's 10 episodes and not reoccurring or anything.
What's the difference between working on like with a streaming service on that's something that's got multiple episodes versus working on a film project?
Well, there it is, and everybody, I admittedly, it drives me a little bit crazy, Eric. The streaming, that's no big deal. Like whatever it is, great. Theater streaming makes little difference,
right?
The episode thing drives me nuts.
Right. That's kind of what I was wondering about.
Oh, I can't get my head around it because after obviously doing features for so long, they're set up so you have a director either every other episode sometimes, or sometimes they might do a block they give them 2 episodes or whatever. Then you're transitioning. A new director's coming in, maybe a new DP.
So they're not using the same crowd through the whole thing.
No.
And what's the thought process?
And you're prepping, prepping.
Why are they doing that? Like,
well, the idea is to be able to, the next group comes in and preps it instead of prepping the whole thing. Because, each one of these episodes, it's different all the time. Sometimes an hour and a half, sometimes it might be an hour, whatever the episodes might be. But usually those things are a little bit longer. Remember, a feature film is what, hour and 40, hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah, so you're basically doing half a feature film on every episode?
Right. Something like that, Yeah. So you need to bring in another group to get ready to prep the next episode.
Oh, well, that makes a ton of sense. Okay.
Right, but the problem is, for me, a guy that has worked with features, when I read the script or whatever, I look at, as a storyteller, you look at the through line, and I just see it as one big story. So I can't compartmentalize, okay, oh, you have episode 2 and 3. Like they don't want to talk about 4 and 5 because what happened in 3 and 4 should set up what happened in 4 and 5.
Yeah.
And
you're looking at the whole arc, and those people are looking at it as like as a project.
Correct. One
or 2 episode project.
That's it.
Yeah.
And they're not responsible for the other stuff. I'm going, but what we did here might affect. And so
that makes sense.
There's tendencies, I think, potentially for things to fall through the crack, or maybe not to button up the story as good as you maybe want to. And certainly it's almost like restarting, maybe stylistic, how they want to shoot, getting them up to speed of what we've been doing or not doing or whatever it might be. And by the way, great crew, smart people, great storytellers. I learn stuff all the time. Nothing's different with this crew. They're amazing. Great to work with. Pros.
What's it like?
It's tough. It's tough.
So what's it like working with people who, I'm going to assume, maybe and you can correct me if I'm wrong, who know nothing about sports in most cases, or most of the film people kind of, that's not their wheelhouse, right? I mean, that's why you're
well,
there.
thank goodness, because I wouldn't have a job if it was anything else. And if you think about it, if you were doing military movies and like, what do I know about Navy SEALs taking the beach?
Sure.
Next to nothing. So if I was doing a movie like that, I need to bring somebody in that could walk me through exactly, technically what's supposed to happen, what looks real, because authenticity is the number one thing. Same if you were doing like medical stuff, like, if you did a medical show, you want to make sure that you've got somebody in there that, medically we're saying the right things, we're doing the right things, we're in surgery, we're asking for the right, we're asking for the right tool, all that kind of stuff. So you can kind of pick their brain and make sure it's all correct. So most of these people, again,
they're leaning on you heavy. They're bringing you in and saying, tell us what to do.
And I would say Eric, more than ever, even when I first started, because we're so, whether you want to call it oversaturated with all the 1,000 channels or whatever it is, with sports. And as much as the world, not just America, takes in sports,
the way we consume it,
we consume it at a level that's never right. So even the non-sports fans tend to browse through, watch the Super Bowl. They may not watch the entire thing. So they start knowing just enough to be dangerous in some ways. But my point is, you can't fool them if it's not right. If it's not right, if it doesn't look good, they're going to check out. They're going to get bumped pretty easy, because again,
and I've seen some of those where it's just like, oh my gosh, these people have never played a sport in their life, and they didn't bring anybody in that did. And it wasn't always like that, right?
Sure.
I mean, they didn't always do this, bring in sports coordinators. Like, you got started on this because of a movie called The Program that was done at the University of South Carolina back in the late 80s.
No, it was
right. Was it
93?
93. And that was kind of your first foray into this whole film thing. How did that, that's such an interesting story. How did that whole thing go down?
Well, I played football up at Appalachian State, Mac Brown. I grew up in Greensboro, North Carolina. My high school coach got a job up there, I think a linebacker coach.
Up at App?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I played quarterback in high school, wanted to play receiver, played a little defensive back too. And so, they were going to let me get a chance. Mac Brown's, they were going to give me a chance to play receiver. So I followed him up there. And that's a whole nother story. Of course, that, they get fired the first year I'm up there, end up with 3 different coaches, and
no free agency like they've got now, where they can just
no transfer portals.
You're locked in.
Kind of stuff. That's right. But anyway, so in '93, I'm in Columbia, finishing up my degree at the University of South Carolina. My brother's playing quarterback there, and I'm going to be, probably what I'm thinking is, I'm going to be a college coach.
Yeah,
is what I'm thinking. I had drifted around, tried out in the NFL, had, Canadian Football League, that kind of thing.
All as a quarterback?
As a receiver. As a receiver.
Okay.
And, had some bites here and there, but for the most part, I thought, okay, this part's over.
This part of my life.
Yeah.
We all pretty much know when that part of our life is done.
Over.
We can feel it.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story. But I remember, right. when they called, like, who can go and who could stay, at camp, where you find that little piece of paper in the locker.
Yep.
That says, you can go now.
Mm-hmm.
I literally was like, okay, somebody made a mistake and dropped this here. I mean, it's like, it's a shock of the whole world. Like, you're not used to that. Like,
well, you go from being, regardless of what level it happens, you go from being the best to all of a sudden either being below average, or you just can't even cut it. Like, it happens like that.
Like that.
Yeah.
Like that. Well, and again, one of the first hints was when I showed up, and they said, receivers over here, tight ends over here, and so I go get in the line, and I'm in the line, and
You go.
I look, I
One of
look
these
up, and
things is not like
right, and
the other.
I said, hey, dude, they said the tight end's over here.
Yeah.
He said, no, I'm a receiver, man, and I went, and can run like a deer. Like I thought, I could run pretty good. Like I thought,
He's taller than me,
oh
faster
yeah,
than me.
right.
Yeah.
Like this is going to be tough. So, yeah, that was a little bit of a wake up call. But anyway, in '93, I get a telephone call saying, "Hey, I heard you played college football." One of the producers on this movie, the program, we're doing this movie.
So who's making this phone call?
This is a producer. I think it was Celia Costas called.
And he got your
Touchstone
how
Pictures.
Did he even get your information?
Great question.
You have no idea.
No earthly idea.
That's unbelievable.
I think that, listen,
that one call changed your entire life.
Oh yeah. And I think I think, they both were checking. I can't remember if Todd at that point was in law school, maybe.
He wasn't playing anymore.
It seems like, it seems like he was out, right? Okay. Yeah. 93. So I think he was in law school. So I think the call came to, kind of the brothers and help us out and that kind of stuff. So they got a hold of both of us, and I said, hey, let me check with my professor. I said, well, first of all, I don't know anything about filmmaking, like nothing.
Yeah.
But I knew a little bit about football, sure. And I started doing some research, Eric, and I'm eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, no money, trying to freaking, hoping to be a coach, grad assistant,
right.
that kind of thing.
You're like, oh, this might put a little money in my pocket,
maybe,
right?
and can I even get time to do this and what is? So I started
right.
doing some research on what kind of a movie technical advisor might be. So when I walked in there, I said, listen, my professor's going to work with me. This looks like I could maybe help out, but I need this much, a week or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I didn't know if they're going to laugh me out of the room or what it was. She stood right up.
I mean, there's no internet back there. So how do you even figure out what you think hard to ask
right.
for?
I remember, diving in or making some phone calls, just getting a ballpark.
Yeah.
And she stood right up and said, welcome to the team.
You're like, I should ask for more.
I should ask for more. and yeah, so bam, I dive in and, I read the script and it was a great experience, great experience. And it was just fantastic. Learned a lot. So my job was to, recruit and cast all the players, that was on the hero team, that on the opponent teams. My job was to work with the actors, Craig Sheffer and some of those guys, to make sure that they looked as real as possible. Consult on the script, make sure that the terminology was good, all that kind of stuff. Draw the plays, choreograph, take the guys in training camp, run a whole training camp, teach them the plays, the whole thing.
That's an interesting. You took a bunch of actors. How many of them had ever played football before? Did they have a football background? Any of them?
There was one guy. What was Dwayne's last name? Oh boy, he's going to kill me. I'm terrible with that. His dad played for the Packers.
Okay.
Played the linebacker in that movie.
Oh,
dude,
yeah,
this was so long ago.
Yeah. This, I was going to say, we're talking about a movie
it was
that
30 years ago. I mean, something like that.
Ago.
But
James Cann was the coach. You had a really big guy playing the lead in that.
Great guy too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but most of them, never played. And so for me, and by the way, that was a learning curve too. I kind of got called in fairly early. I guess I was
a little too hard on the boys,
maybe
on the actors.
Right.
They weren't used to being in camp.
Right.
Getting their butts chewed.
Right. And I only knew one way, and all I knew was my name was going to be on this thing, and that I was supposed to be in charge of this guy was supposed to be a Heisman Trophy quarterback. And, I think, Jim McMahon or somebody was hot at that time. And,
well, we've all seen, we've all seen those movies where a guy just doesn't like, he doesn't even look like he belongs out there. You know, they've got him supposedly playing this amazing athlete, and he's running weird, or, you know, he's moving in a weird way, or just no command of the sport. So it's a super important component to it.
Well, not only that, I said, before we start doing that, let's see if we can take a snap.
Yeah.
Without breaking our fingers.
Exactly.
Like I mean,
things that guys who have been in the sport forever take for granted. Like, you're talking about people who have never done it. And
let's work on our feet work, you know, on the 3-step drop. Let's work on like, you know, how we hold the ball, how, you know, how really, because again, you're obviously going to double these guys and for hits and that kind of stuff. But the more that you see them, the more that they can do, the more believable the audience is. By the way, you know, I've got a saying that says, you know, like somewhere in the middle of all this crazy stuff, this great gig, this career I've had, this, I don't even call it a job because I feel like I never get up to go to work. It's fantastic. It's a greatest gig in the world. I mean, love it. But somewhere along the way, I think, you know, I've told some people that, you know, you won't believe the tears in the locker room if you don't believe the catch in the end zone.
Yeah.
You've got to believe both. They've got to work together.
Yep, that's right.
So what I try to tell the guys is, you know, we got to earn it. You know, I have a great story. Denzel Washington did the Hurricane or whatever. I think the opening of the movie, first minute and a half, 2 minutes of the movie or whatever, he plays this heavyweight champion boxer. And I saw the interview and they said, you know, why would you train like 3 months? And the rest of the movie's in jail.
Yeah.
Like, why would you train 3 months, you know, or whatever, for just a minute and a half of the movie, you know, something like that, first 2 minutes of the movie? He said, well, if they don't believe that I'm the heavyweight boxer of the world, that
they're not going to believe anything else.
Nothing else from there on. Yeah. And I thought, that's it. Like, there it is.
That makes complete sense.
Complete sense. And that's why, you know, he's Denzel.
Yeah. And that was a good, I mean, that was a good film. Like, from the standpoint of, I remember watching that, you know, it's interesting because we didn't know each other at all. Right. But there was this, I was at Carolina in 93. That was my first year. Came down there as a GA, you know, college football coach. That was my thing. I did that for 10 years, but I had been coaching at a small school for 2 years. I got a gig coming down, breaking down film, doing all the grunt work.
Yeah.
We were there at the same time. We never met each other.
That's right.
At all. But it was a movie that I was pretty aware of. So how do you take that, which basically happened by happenstance, and leverage that into what was the next opportunity?
Oh, it was not leverage, Eric. It was no leverage.
It just happened. It just kind of like cascaded. Like, what did that look like?
Yeah. So I got done with it and I thought, okay,
that was fun.
Yeah. Back to work, back to life. Okay. By the way,
you're still in school, right?
Yeah. I'm like, okay, you know, sure. Like, okay, fine. I got to work on a movie. Great experience. Move on. Like, that was it.
But you're not sitting here thinking, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. You thought that
absolutely not.
That was freaking cool.
One and done.
Like,
great.
That was awesome.
Fine. Right. Yeah. And put a little bit of money in my pocket and, you know, great. Okay. So then the telephone just started to ring. And what I mean, I think, you know, I think the Waterboy was first. Well, you know, I think it's, again, the order. I'm not good at. I'm not good at which order went.
When you look at the list, there's so many of them.
Right. So I can't remember. I think I did a couple. I mean, literally, I think before I even got done, there was a movie called The Foreign Student that I did that was filmed in Richmond, Virginia, that Robin Givens, who was married to Mike Tyson at the time.
Yeah, she was really big back then.
Right.
Yeah.
She was starring in it. There's a little bit of period football in that. I went and did that. Then, you know, The Waterboy with Sandler happened, you know.
That movie is like timeless.
Right.
That was the first time you met Sandler, right?
Yeah. And that story.
Because you've worked with him a lot over the course of the years. And that was the first time.
Yeah. And again, I got the telephone call. I got the script. I read the script.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, no, thank you.
Really?
I was young and dumb. And, yeah. I mean,
what? You just thought,
I'm like, at that point,
you're like, this is stupid.
I mean, it's like, it's Sandler. It's like fart jokes and, like, you know, like, you know, and the football seemed just wacky and crazy and all. Like, why do you, this like doesn't seem? I'm thinking just drama. You know, I'm thinking
You're like, no, this isn't real. This doesn't
right.
look like
It's
football.
goofy.
This
It's all that
this
stuff. Like,
it's
no, right.
kind of makes the sport look dumb.
Correct. And I think Jerry Ketchum, who's now the president at Disney, was the vice president or whatever, was like, you know, hey, if you'll do this, we've got another movie called Whispers. It's with Will Smith coming after this. I'm like, Will Smith, you know, wow.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I get there and there's this big thing, you know, like there was a, you know, with Sandler, I think early on, it was like, let's make the football real and make the characters in the game funny, but let's make the football as real as we possibly can make it. That was kind of my big push, I think, at first. And
what did he? Is that did he buy into that, or was he kind of like, no, I want the whole thing to be goofy?
You know, I think it was a little bit of give and take. Now, remember, I mean, to say that Adam is brilliant, you know, and again to say, well, it's when I stopped guessing, dude, the movie made $175 million.
Oh, it was a humongous movie.
It's the number one. Huge. I think it still today is the number one
football
sports
movie.
Sports
in
movie.
General.
Box office sports movie.
Really?
Of all time.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. You know what I think number 2 is?
What?
The Longest Yard.
So
he did both of them.
He's got the top 2.
I think he's got the top 2. I think Any Given Sunday's in there. I think Jerry Maguire's in there.
Which you did.
Yep. Did both those, I think.
What did Jerry Maguire gross? I thought, because that's a big football
movie.
That's
what changed the industry. That movie, Jerry Maguire. So to go back to the story, I did The Waterboy. It worked out great. You know, Adam is everything that you think he is, everything you've heard.
Yeah, he just looks like such a genuine guy. When I hear about what he does off screen and all that stuff, he just seems like a dude, a normal dude, you know.
Normal, really good dude. And loyal, like you're saying, his guys that run around with him, the Long Island guys, you know, all true, the best guys ever. Like, you know, not just to work with, but just to hang with. Just they get it, right? You know, they get it. You know,
they literally seem like a bunch of dudes that grew up together. One of them just crushed it. The other ones are talented, and they're like doing what they love, hanging out, and they happen to make a living doing it.
And that's what, like, sometimes I wonder if they're going to, you know, they're now they're to the point now where I think they're pretty convinced that if they pinch themselves, you know, like, okay, maybe this is real at this point.
It's been going on for 25 years.
Right.
I think we got it going.
I think we got it now. But I think for a while they were like looking around to see if anybody was going to, you know, like grab them by the back of the shirt and pull them out and go,
is anyone going to realize we don't belong here?
Right.
Yeah.
They're those dudes.
Yeah.
Like, which is just fantastic.
Yeah, that is awesome.
And Adam's that way. And he's, I mean, you know, anyway, he's that kind of guy. And then, so
you said
that worked out, you know, that worked out great. Yeah.
And then Jerry Maguire.
Well, right after Waterboy
changed the game or something.
Well, right after Waterboy, during Waterboy.
Okay.
I think I'm in Orlando. I've got 2 more weeks to go.
Where did they film that?
We're in Orlando,
Florida.
In
Orlando? Okay.
Yep. We're in Orlando, Florida. 2 weeks to go. And I get this telephone call. Hey, we're doing this movie in Texas called Varsity Blues.
That movie was big.
Huge.
Right? That was who was the lead?
Paul Walker.
Yeah.
John Voight.
That was Walker's like first big movie, wasn't it?
Right. Now the lead really on that, you know, Voight was big, but it was James Van Der Beek coming off of Dawson's Creek.
Yeah, he was in Dawson's
Creek. That WB group, Paramount, you know, those guys, Mike Tolan, Brian Robbins. So I end up doing a bunch of movies with who are just fantastic guys. Tolan Robbins production company. They forget it. Like they killed it. They again, fantastic guys. The best to work with. They get sports, love sports, did a bunch of movies with them, but that was the first one. And at that point, that was a big race between Varsity Blues and Friday Night Lights. Who was going to
race to get it out first?
Race to get it out first. Race to see who was going to get it going first. Because Friday Night Lights was the bestseller. And
yeah,
so
the
it
book
was
was
it
a
was a
huge-
race there. It
huge
was a
book.
race there. And,
Which one did better at the box office?
Oh, I need to check. I think Friday Night Lights did pretty good, which I did not. I turned that down. Did not do Friday Night Lights because I wanted to go do Coach Carter. I wanted to do a basketball movie,
But that was an amazing movie with
which did better than Friday Night Lights at the box office.
Yeah.
Which I'm happy to say. But and Peter Berger I had worked with before on a movie called Rise and Walk, who was an actor who played Dennis Byrd, the guy that was paralyzed from the Jets. It was like a Fox movie of the week or something.
Okay.
And Peter was an actor. I think he was on ER, one of those medical shows back then.
He's the one that did Coach Carter? That was his film?
No. He directed Friday Night Lights.
Oh, okay. I follow you.
But
okay,
I had already worked with him on a movie called The Dennis Byrd Story, where he was an actor.
Right. And if you don't know who Peter Berg is, he did Titanic, right? Wasn't he like one of the
No,
Titanic?
He did Battleship.
Okay.
Directed that.
I got my boats mixed up.
You got your boats mixed up, which cracks me up. I can't wait for everybody to see this. That's awesome, dude. That is so great.
I thought that guy did Titanic. That's freaking hilarious.
I think so.
I saw Battleship.
I think maybe
too.
James Cameron might have done.
Oh, that's right. What the hell am I?
Oh
my God,
Lord, that's
freaking
awesome.
Hilarious.
Yeah, and I think Peter and Wahlberg have worked a bunch together.
Gotcha.
Lone Survivor. But Peter, again, another guy that's just freaking blown up, like him and Favreau. I worked with them when they were actors. Now they're like these huge directors and producers. But
it's interesting how that transition
happens. It's great. It's great to watch. It's great to watch them.
Especially when you watch an old movie and they're like not even leads, like they're like, a supporting actor or kind of a smaller part. And now they're like some of the biggest guys in Hollywood.
And great dudes, just see them watch that career happen, and watch them. It's great. It's great to watch, and just thrilled about it.
And so John Favreau did Little Women too, right?
Yeah. Because remember, I did with Favreau. I did with The Replacements.
Yeah, with Keanu.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
you've worked with like literally some of the hugest guys in the film industry. I mean, Tom Cruise, Keanu Reeves, Samuel L. Jackson, right? All these guys.
Oh, I mean let's talk.
Huge.
Again, you can go almost, Eric. I'd say, well, you can start even older when you start talking in one of your favorite movies, I think Miracle. But if you start talking about
Kurt Russell,
Gene Hackman, Robert Duvall,
who'd you work with? What did you work on with Hackman?
Hackman, I did Replacements with.
Oh, that's right. He was in that too.
And
what was Duvall in that you did?
And Hackman. You're not. When I got done with the program, Josh McLaughlin, who was the assistant director on the program.
Yeah.
Family history, unbelievable in the film industry. This dude is maybe one of the best ADs right now on the planet. He was, young in 93, amazing guy. I think his dad might have directed some of like John Wayne's old Westerns. I think if it's, Sisters, huge producer. And Josh is like, maybe he just saw that I was eager and young and would do anything and coachable and all this stuff. He says, "You're going to be an AD. I'm going to train you. You're going to be with me." And he took me with him out to Moab, Utah, to do a movie called Geronimo, a Western.
So,
okay,
there's no football in a Western.
That's what I said. That's what I said. I said, "Josh, there's no what?" And so, no, just trust me. Just come on. I'm going to train you. This was a huge compliment at the time. I probably didn't really know how big it was. And he was taking a chance on me and didn't have to and all the other stuff. And I got out there. So anyway,
no matter what industry you're in, if somebody good takes you under their wing, like that's the catapult,
Of course.
right, into anything.
Yeah, and that's the reason you work hard. That's the reason you
Right,
bust your
to
butt.
create those opportunities for
that's it.
yourself. Yep.
That's it. When you're working on something, my whole approach was always, I'm really working on the next one.
Yeah.
Or to get the next one. Because remember, I'm unemployed 8 times a year if it's a good year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's project.
It's always about
there's nobody cutting you a paycheck that
No.
you're like, I'm going to get that paycheck in 6 months.
Correct.
It's like, okay, I'm on this one, then I got to have
Right.
something else lined up.
But again, at the time, I didn't know any better because I thought this program was just going to be a one and done. But Josh
Right.
took me to go to do that. So you start out as this key PA. So you work all this, production assistant type thing. Everything from making copies to pouring coffee to blocking off things to, like the list. It's like to do. It's like
the GA of the film industry.
That's correct.
It's the grunt work.
It's the grunt work.
And you got to be willing to do the grunt work to be able to do the real work.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which all that has to happen for stuff to go off.
Of course.
So
3 weeks into it, I said I quit.
Really?
Oh God. Thank you, but no thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Sometimes in life you have to do things to find out what you don't want to do.
And did he talk you into staying, or were you done?
Oh,
They
called me in the office. I think they threw like they were already giving me how, like nobody was getting this stuff as a PA. Like you have to pay for your own, like
right.
Some of these people like sleep in their cars to do this job.
Yeah.
They're giving me, hotel, the whole
people
thing.
People are like dying. People would kill to have
get that
job.
opportunity. And I'm like, I cannot get away
sucks.
from this quick enough.
Yeah.
I just could not.
Well, you don't know what you got. You don't know what you don't know, right?
Right. And it was all of it. I wanted to be, I was just in the middle of the action. Like literally, I was right next to camera. I was,
yeah, I mean, you're playing like these huge role, like these integral parts in developing the storyline and shooting and all that stuff. And now you're getting coffee and making copies.
Right. And eventually, as an AD like Josh is, eventually you get back to that role if you pay your dues and you take that proper line. And by the way, that line is like, it's going to medical school. By the time you have to do so many hours on set, I think it's like, 3-4 years or something like that before you acquire enough hours to eventually get into the directors, guild. Right.
Yeah. So there's actually, and I think
you go
a lot of
from
people don't know
$600 a week.
A lot of people don't know that there's this kind of scale, right?
Right.
You have to do
the union.
You have to put in a certain amount of time to be able to work certain titles to get paid certain amount of money. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
So it was like going to medical school. So like I'm looking, not only am I looking at trying to get through this movie, I'm looking at, 4 more years of this before you get into being an assistant director. And when I was also, it obviously, because I'm working and watching what the assistant director is doing, hurting people.
Let's make sure hurting HERD, not HURT.
Right. I'm a Southern guy.
You're not beating people down when they're not doing what they're supposed to do. Or maybe you are.
Which, by the way, I tend to do sometimes in coaching as well, right? But
yeah, well, that's the world,
right?
We come from a little bit of a different background.
Correct, but it didn't resonate. It didn't float the boat, so to speak.
But they talked you into staying.
They taught me into staying. I did it. I finished it out or whatever. And at that point, I was like, well, that's just, if this is going to work, it's not going to be there. The other thing that it gave me a glimpse into, which was interesting with choices, is the world of stunts in Hollywood. And
which is really, really interesting. Like those guys, my oldest son actually at one point was super interested in that. He was like, he could like do a standing backflip, and he used to do all that parkour stuff where they'd go jump from buildings, if he would have known how to get into it, he would have done that.
Right.
But go on, because I'm really interested in that.
It is interesting, industry. And it's another skill set, and it's another whole part of it that was very interesting.
Did you pick that up as kind of part of your repertoire then? Because
it was because my responsibility. My responsibility part of it is to make sure, whether it's football or hockey or whatever, with the hits, everybody's safe, it's going to work, and you guys, we're going to walk away from this, and it's okay. And keeping everybody safe.
Right.
But what Geronimo kind of did was give me a glimpse, and I'm watching, Cowboys and Indians fight and falling off horses and
Who
horses.
was that? Johnny Depp? Who was in that one? I
That
don't
was
remember
Jason
that movie.
Patrick.
Okay.
But you know what it also was, Eric? The big thing at that point, it wasn't even at that
Johnny
point.
Depp did what was the old show that?
By the way, I cannot wait for your daughter to see this between you saying Peter Berg and Titanic.
Trust me, my daughter
Depp.
doesn't know either.
Probably not. You're right. Which I'm trying to get her to watch some more stuff.
Oh, she's got a laundry list. A lot of them.
Yeah, she's got a big to-do list.
She's working her way through them, but you're right. She's got to get to know like these films that happened 20, 25 years ago. So she's got reference to the industry.
Got to.
Yeah.
But anyway,
The Lone Ranger. That's what Depp did.
That's right.
I knew it was
there you go.
Those movies. I knew it was a Western.
That's right.
All right,
so,
keep going. Sorry.
But the big thing on this one was Matt Damon's big thing. Matt Damon's first big. Here comes this guy that's supposed to be a new star. It was like Matt Damon's first thing. So on Geronimo, even though Hackman and Duvall were on that thing, and Jason Patrick was on that thing, and then Wes Studi and those guys, all those guys. It was Matt's first big debut, I think, on the big screen.
So sidebar question, because it's part of that. Do producers and the people who make the decisions, like when you said he was supposed to be the next big thing, right?
Yeah.
Do they have people that they think this is the guy, or like that's a question I've always asked is, does that kind of happen? Like somebody does something, they do a good job in it, somebody sees him, they're like, oh yeah, he's pretty good. Or do they kind of see a guy and go, this guy could like really blow up. Let's like take a chance on him and put him in something because we think he could be huge.
Dude, it's the same in sports. You do this all the time.
Yeah.
We see the athlete. We
know what it takes to make it.
We don't, okay,
like,
so let's say you saw him. Let's say that you saw him. Let's say you saw the athlete or whatever, last month. I go to the game.
Okay.
A month later, I see the kid. We get together somewhere down the road.
Did you see that kid?
Did you see that kid?
Yeah.
And there it goes.
Okay. That makes a ton of sense.
There's no difference whatsoever. It's just literally word of mouth. Everybody knows the it factor. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can be wrong every now and then. It takes a lot to get through that small window, just like in sports.
But there's a skill set that kind of they have to have. You see it, you're like, and you got to fit people into an age group for certain roles based upon what you're shooting. Right. So it's not like you can pull a guy who's 30 back. So you're looking for guys in each one of those age groups.
Constantly looking for the next young guy.
Yeah.
Constantly looking for the next young guy. Back to Varsity Blues, Paul Walker was that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, Vanderbeek was already established.
Yeah.
He got the lead role in that. Vanderbeek was the lead role. Now you could say, did Paul go on to have, I don't know, bigger career, maybe, whatever. Yeah. James did great in TV early.
Mm-hmm.
Paul was kind of a feature guy later. But I remember when Paul showed up, it was interesting because there was like, he's the next Robert Redford.
Paul Walker.
Yeah.
He had
great.
By the way, great
kid.
I mean, that guy had like everything I saw him in, I liked him in. He had it all. In my I don't know anything about the film industry, but just as a consumer of the product, anything I saw him in, I liked him.
Yeah. And another guy that just, off camera, just
solid.
Just a human spirit with that guy is just an amazing person, tough stuff.
That stuff seems like it translates. Like, I mean,
it does. Keanu's the same way. Keanu's the same way.
It seems like the people that are really like that, somehow that comes off the screen when you're watching them. You almost get this sense that there's, that's kind of who they are, or they couldn't play whatever they're playing the way they are.
It's hard to hide that stuff.
Yeah.
That's part of the it. Some people can pretend better.
Yeah.
Right than others, but not act, but pretend.
Right.
But the authenticity we've talked about, you can't hide that. And so when you show up with that it factor, and part of the it factor is just that spirit, that human spirit, the heart, the kindness, the person that you want to be around, the caring, all that stuff, the perspective. The other thing that the other tangible is that people don't give enough credit for, my opinion, is smart.
Just intelligence. Because there's this kind of, among people who don't know the industry, there is this perception, or whether stereotype, whatever you call it, that actors don't, that the intelligence level isn't super high. That's why they're actors.
Because you're not supposed to be good looking and smart,
right?
You're not supposed
and all they got to do is pretend to be somebody
correct.
else.
But it's not the case. I'm telling, like to get to that level, it's the same with the guys that play in professional sports. Most of them, you better be a smart dude. Like, it's another tangible that's going to help you, your intelligence, interpret what the coach wants, interpret what the game needs, understand the situation, think you're not overwhelmed, by the moment. You're smart enough to understand you better prepare. It's, yes, it's discipline and all the other stuff that goes into it, but intelligence is a huge attribute that helps propel a lot of these people. And the people that we're talking about, in my opinion, smart. I mean, just, they get it.
Yeah. I mean, I've always just wondered how, the amount of dialogue that they have to memorize, right? You can't be stupid and do that.
No.
That blows my mind. Like, the ability to memorize all that information, and then not just to memorize it, but to translate it into what you're trying to achieve on the screen. You have to be intelligent to be able to do that. I would think.
I would agree. And I think I think after a while that comes easier for them too, because they're training their brain.
Where else?
You start out like anything else, right? You start out, it takes you, 2 hours or 2 days or whatever it is to get the 2 pages of dialogue going. And then by the time you're later on, it takes you half hour, so you train. I think they end up repetition. That ends up getting easier as well. The more you do it,
you train the brain.
Right. And so, and again, but you have to have that brain to be able to do that, and to be able to keep.
Where else does intelligence play a role for an actor in that industry? Where does that benefit them, or where does that put them ahead of other people?
I think seeing story, and then understanding the other characters that are around you, and how you, again, why was I ever drawn to this industry? Teamwork. These guys are team players. So they're going to look around at the other characters and understand, how can I benefit you?
Mm-hmm.
What's your character doing in the story? How's it motivating? Does my character need to feed yours, back and forth, so on and so forth? So understanding big picture, and then seeing the progression through Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and have a clear understanding of seeing the wide, and also making the choices early that set up and get the most out of Act 3, the payoffs. The smart ones see it and get it right away. Then when you flush the ego and you flush the vanity, and they're humble,
right?
You plug that in, right? Because they're confident, because they're smart, because they prepared.
Then it becomes less. Like they're there and they know that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, but they're looking at everything else and saying, how does what I do play into? How does what I do help you be better at what you're trying to do? How do I feed into the other dynamic between these characters?
Right. The other thing is, writers are different.
In what way?
Well, interpreting what's on the page.
Oh, okay, understood.
Sometimes it's like, did he mean this, or does he really mean that?
Yeah.
What's he going for here? And not being afraid to ask a question, or interpreting it a couple of different ways, including interpreting maybe even the way the writer didn't see it. And then everybody going, oh my God, that's even better.
Yeah.
So that takes intelligence.
What's an example of that?
Oh, I can't do that.
No.
That's
Too many
hard.
of them.
There's
Okay.
top of my head. That's tough. But I've seen those. Those are again.
I would imagine that happens a lot.
Oh, Eric,
I mean,
and
especially with the really good ones.
Oh, and it's magic when it happens.
Yeah.
Dude, it's like watching magic when it happens because
everyone probably just goes,
oh,
what? Like,
yeah, that's it.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
Like we didn't even think about that.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's like what, if you're sitting there watching a guy like, do a painting live or doing
who's good
sculpture.
at that? That's probably not as hard. Like, who are some of the actors that are really good at taking something on a page and sometimes doing something different with it that becomes magic?
I'll preface this by saying, when I first, from the very beginning in 93, when I first got, there was no wow with any of the actors because I had been around big time sports guys. Remember?
No, you mean no wow for you weren't like.
No, I was not intimidated.
Like
I was not.
You were like,
no,
yeah.
There was none of that for me.
That comes from athletics at a high level.
I've kind of been around, that kind of thing, and so to me there was no that wow thing. Now there was always listen. Well, the other thing that makes a great gig for me is, remember, every athlete wants to be an actor. Every actor wants to be an athlete. And everybody wants to be a rock and roll star.
Well, that is true.
Oh, period.
Yeah.
That's
like
it.
the three factual
there it is
of life.
And we can debate later, all three of them are at a bar and which one the chick is going to, walk over to. Like we can argue.
The rock and roll star. I can tell you.
There you go.
Now.
Every time.
Yeah.
Every time.
Because he's the bad boy.
No doubt. So, but anyway, so I'm in. I don't get wowed by a lot.
Right.
When we're in Miami doing Any Given Sunday, and I walk in and meet Al Pacino,
I'm with you on that one because I've been in the same situation around a lot of really high profile people. Pacino would kind of freeze me up.
Well,
not from the standpoint of I couldn't talk, but just from the standpoint of kind of being like, it's a wow moment. Like I'm around somebody that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Well,
I'll tell you how I interpreted it.
Okay.
Which was because at that point I'd been around Academy Award winners, multiple, Hall of Fame athletes. But how I interpreted it was,
how long had you been in the industry at this point?
I think that was it was 99, but I had worked a bunch already.
So you'd been 6-7 years, but you've been on a bunch of high profile
6-7
projects,
but
high profile.
Yeah. And
people.
then, and then, having to go to some red carpet events and having to go to the SPs and that kind of thing, so even if you're not working with them, you end up meeting them and coming across them, and
you're
introduced and that kind of thing. But so Al's maybe what, 5'7", 5'8",
little, yeah, he's
right?
Short.
Okay, he seems 6'6" to me.
I believe that his presence, 6'6",
6'8". I mean, like, I'm not. That's weird. I know it sounds weird, but I'm telling you, his presence. Like, I got the impression after the first. We said Oliver Stone, Jim Brown, and Pacino. And first of all, I'm like, what am I doing in a room like this?
Yeah, one of those guys.
If some guy from South Carolina, like what in the world? Like what? Like it's that moment, it's that moment. But after, and by the way, Jim Brown, like,
right, yeah. If you're a sport, anybody that knows anything about sports, Jim Brown is blowing your mind.
Maybe the best. It's maybe,
yeah,
arguably, and still one of my favorite people. But anyway, I got the impression that this was different because with Pacino, I got the impression this guy was born to do it. This guy was born to do this. Like, that's the impression I got. Like the impression I got was this guy was born to do. I don't care if he was a rocket scientist. I don't care if he was a trash collector. I don't care if he was a chemical engineer, like an architect. You get the feeling that the dude was born to do this. And
was that, when you say you get that feeling, is that from, you mean the way he worked on set, or just literally being around him and
being
the way
around
he
him and
approached
listening to him, and also watching him, listening.
watching him
Yes.
listen.
Yes.
Like
both.
he's not the guy talking all the time. He's paying a lot of attention. to what's going on.
Correct. And watch him process, and then watch how he processes, and then watch. Yeah, just so if you're asking me who's like really, who's good at doing those kind of things, he's the same way. The other guy,
Heat is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
And I like Pacino and De Niro in that movie. I love Pacino in a bunch of stuff, and I loved him in Any Given Sunday.
Yeah,
but I know what you're talking about.
And I've
like
ended
he's
up
one of
doing-
those guys that just, when I see him on screen, like I'm just locked in on that dude.
they have a saying. I think they say this, for women especially, but I think I've seen it apply, no doubt, to many, maybe not many, but to men as well. Is like he eats the camera,
That
like
makes sense.
literally.
Right.
He like the camera has.
He's like, God,
he has no. The camera has no chance.
Right.
It's over.
He's just demanding.
I mean,
His presence is demanding.
Which means that's why you can't take your eyes off of it.
Yeah.
Like he eats it, like just like you can't avert your eyes. He dances with it. Yeah.
Yeah. You were gonna say somebody.
Well, yeah. Well,
I didn't mean to cut you off.
I've just done several projects with him now and become fairly close with him, and I will tell you that it's been a joy as a man. He's been helpful. He's been encouraging. He's been all those things, when you're, just with a lot going on, he, brings it back and makes you laugh, and, all those things that you would do it. You hope that in your career you meet those people, especially those older guys.
Special person.
Yeah.
Not just an amazing actor, but a special person.
Correct. And I think chemistry wise, and that just happened with me with him, is because Oliver said, "Oh, by the way, when I got there, you're going to play the quarterback coach, so you're going to be an actor in this thing." And I had done some of that, and I'm a terrible actor, but usually
you have a headset on, and you're calling plays,
right? Like they need somebody to yell something.
That fits your wheelhouse,
right? They need somebody to yell something, and they say, put Mark over there, and he'll yell something, and they run out of people, and like go over there. Well, Oliver's thought was Al, has got some stuff, doesn't know football all that well, and you could be there, right there, literally,
right next
talking right next to him, talking a little bit through the scene and what. So that became that relationship, the hours that we spent, 12, 14-hour days, 12-hour days.
How long was that shoot?
I know we prepped like it was 6 months, dude.
Oh, that's a long time together.
And we started in Miami, and then we moved to Dallas. We shot that big speech he had in the Dallas locker room, the old Cowboy Stadium. That ends the movie.
Yeah, that's a great scene.
So I helped write, writing a little bit on, with some of the again, that's part of my job, right? To go over kind of some of that stuff, and so talking with him through some of that stuff was just crazy, ridiculous, and fun, and it's just fun stuff to, again, to be bouncing, reading lines and going back. I mean, come on. Running lines with Al Pacino. I mean, it's like,
yeah, you couldn't imagine that ever in your life.
No. And again, the most giving and gracious and humble guy there is. Just again, when you look, when he's talking to you, when you feel like you're the only guy in the world.
Yeah. Some people just have, and I think, like you said, he listens, whatever, but I think the people that do that generally do care, right? There's some people that do it and their eyes are going, to the other parts of the room to see who's more important they should be talking to. Some people, they're just locked in on you, and that what they're saying matters. Like, that what you're saying to them matters to them. They actually are engaged with you. and
I'm
they
going to
care.
say, you know, I think this is important, so I'm going to say it. And I've been working on this lately. I think it comes back to this. I rewatched, Eric, The Last Dance a couple weekends ago, you know, with Jordan,
Mm-hmm.
you know, The Last Dance.
Yeah.
And they talked about him being in the moment, being able to constantly be in the moment.
Right.
I'm like, what the hell?
What does that mean?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Really? What does that mean?
So was that the purpose of you going back to rewatch it? Was to just
No.
or you just wanted?
I was just, you know, I loved it. So I wanted
Okay.
to go back and kind of watch it, you know, and so, but, you know, you find these little nuggets
Yep.
in these things. And I'm a big fan of sports documentaries as much as I am scripted feature storytelling, you know, whatever. Sports documentaries are awesome too. So, I, you know, being in the moment. And so it made me think a little bit about it. And I would say that Pacino was one of those guys too. So if there is any semblance between making you feel like you're the only guy in the world at that time when you're
Mhm.
having this conversation with him, and also being in the moment and making the moment, you know, capturing the moment, eating the moment, like just devouring it because you're so just right there. And it's just everything else is nothing before and nothing 5 minutes from now,
Yeah.
but right here, right now. And so it's made me think about that. I think it's very interesting. And I'm still trying to get my head wrapped completely around it because I'm like, and some of that I think is self awareness too. And some people are good at self awareness and some people are not great at self awareness. I think that
That's
also
true.
plays into some of this. I don't know yet, but again, as I try to move on, I think I should work on being in the moment more.
Well, I think the fact that you're even processing that
Yeah.
is, you know, for me, I was very much like that. I think anytime you're super competitive, right, and you're a hard driving person and you're trying to get to the next level, you kind of get trained into this, you know, you're always feel like you have to prove yourself, you have to espouse your positive values, you have to kind of sell yourself. And for me, that's something I've been trying to work on too, is listen a lot more, you know,
Right.
and not just be the person who's talking so that someone else can listen to you, but really truly care about what that person's saying when you're engaging with them and making that moment less about yourself and more about the person that you're there with.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a bigger moment. So anybody other than Pacino? I mean, obviously there's tons of great actors, but is there anyone else that you've worked with that you kind of feel like has that same command?
I mean,
What's Keanu like?
um, everything you think
Mm-hmm.
off camera.
Meaning just solid dude,
Oh,
kind, caring.
all that.
Yeah.
Um, another guy you want in your foxhole,
Mm-hmm. Guy you can trust.
period. Um, he's funny. Some of these guys get in character different ways. I never will forget. I'm working with him on the replacements, and we're drawing plays. We're trying to go as fast as we can. We're shot that in Baltimore. It's hot, and we're going through practices. And this is early on when we put them in training camp, just like you would go through military boot camp if you're doing a military movie.
So you got to going through 2-hour practices, just like it would if they were
Just like
on a.
I've got the assistant coaches holding up these show cards, look like scout cards, like, the defense or offense that you're playing. So everybody shows where they're going, this, that, and the other. And he's looking at the scout card and he goes, I said, yeah, let's throw the screen out there in the flat, throw that. And like, why?
He said, "Why?
Why?
Why are we doing that?"
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. That's what I said. Okay.
Interesting.
Right. Like, needed to know his process as a quarterback, wanted to know.
He's actually trying to understand the play. Why are we running this play? It's not just tell me what to do and I'll go do it. Right. Is it?
Smart, interpret. So what I'm saying is, again, another level of what's the down and distance, where we are on the field. Why am I going to check down to the screen?
So he wanted to know all that information.
All of it.
That's impressive because that's a lot.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, that takes years to learn that kind of stuff.
Well,
as a player.
Oh, what it taught me, he taught me in that moment. In that moment, I went, because this was fairly early for me. And so in that moment, it said, you're right. We're not just going to do action for the sake of action. It needs to have a purpose. It needs to move the story forward.
Right.
Why is he making this choice?
Yep.
And it seems like a little thing that no audience members really, because nobody's talking about that choice. The coach isn't making a statement in the dialogue. There's nothing in the script about that choice. But is
he's
there
interpreting the importance of the choice,
right?
Even though
and
it's not.
The choice that he's getting ready to make after he throws the screen route, and we're getting ready to go do this next. Because what position it puts you in, we didn't get the first down. It did, what all that kind of stuff. Because again, in his eyes,
did he have any background in sports?
Yeah, I think he played hockey. Canadian kid. I think he played hockey.
Okay.
Up in Canada.
Gotcha.
Good athlete. Another guy that, again, had so many motorcycle accidents and so on and so forth. He was a freaking mess even at that point. Yeah, just he running hard. But anyway, I thought that was, it taught me something there in that moment. And from that point on, I looked at everything because, again, he thought even the huddle call that he was getting ready to make, Eric, something behind his eyes, he wanted to be able to say why he's saying it. It's not just X, right, zip, 434 Cadillac. So like he wanted in his eyes.
Does that become tedious to you at any point?
No.
So you're embracing that.
Oh, of course.
Okay.
I loved it. I thought it was a great question, but I mean, I tell that story a lot, and I think he's another guy that interprets, or he could get something on the page and interpret it or make it entirely his own and make more of it. What looks like just a little appetizer.
So, what about Sandler?
Perfectionist.
Really? That's interesting. Because he just seems like so, super laid back and this and that. But so what does that mean in terms of his process?
Well, he's a competitor. He's a competitor. I mean, again, I think a guy that worked his way up from literally nothing.
Where did he start? What's his story?
Well,
I mean, not obviously.
Well, I think, there's these comedy guys. You talking about then comedy guys that you're just trying to get.
The competition in that way is just insane. And you're working like these nothing clubs to try to get up to the next club. Try to get to the next club.
You're trying to get 10 minutes
right
at a nothing club.
Yep.
Right. I mean, you're talking about you're climbing out of a hole that I can't even imagine. Right. And you get $5 and you leave,
and then you finally get to SNL and you get fired.
Yeah.
Right.
And now, and that's a whole nother thing because, doing it live and apparently, you hear stories, these guys, trying to, okay, Lauren, here's the skit. And, they're all
pitching their own stuff, just trying to get on camera.
Well, your nerves, like just trying to come up with the skit for that.
I can't
weekend.
imagine the constant level of stress because you're literally competing with everybody else there for airtime.
Yeah.
Pitching your stuff.
Right. And then here comes the guest. So you're trying to, okay, what maybe would the guest,
right?
What would work there or whatever? And can I get, a skit with, I can't even begin to understand.
I showed my daughter the Hanukkah song last night.
Yeah.
She had never heard it.
Yeah.
She was dying.
Yeah. So
I was
he's
like, you have
yeah.
so much to learn. So he's
I tell him all the time, by the way, like he's legit, like he can hit a golf ball, legit throw a football, legit shoot a basketball.
he's an athletic dude.
Right.
Yeah.
I tell him all the time, slow down. Okay. You're an athletic dude from the waist up. From the waist down, you're a fat Jewish kid, you know? And he dies laughing. Like, and by the way, again, because if you say Sandler, perfectionist, competitor,
Mm-hmm.
I've been asked many times, who's your starting lineup in movie, football, or whatever? Sandler, if you need a free throw hit
He's
with no time, he hits a free throw. If you need somebody to drive down the field, he's got ice in the dude just believes. He believes.
And that's such a huge, right? In anything you do, but in that industry where the competitiveness is just off the charts, like if you don't have that belief in yourself, you're going to get weeded out quick.
And by the way, that's what I'm saying. So when you're asking me who's a perfectionist and you work your butt off to get all the way up there, and you're voted like year in, year out, like one of the top 25 power guys in Hollywood, which Sandler has been. I don't know how many runs he had at $100 million movies straight. I don't know if he still has a record or if he, straight, like over $100 million at the box office. I don't know how many times. And so this is a guy that, again, he works hard and he's got his fingers on everything. I mean, he's in the editing room after the movie's done. He's on set when everybody else is doing their scenes, and wants it right, and at the same time encouraging and thankful, and wants everybody to have fun while we do it. Work hard, play hard.
Yeah.
Work hard, play hard. But there's a reason the dude's at the top. I think because you have to have that kind of drive.
Yeah.
And he has that drive.
Yeah. I mean, doesn't matter what you're in, that, some people will fall into something and they'll be successful for a short period of time. But the people that can stay there, those people have similar qualities.
Right.
The drive, the perfectionism, the desire to put out a good product, whatever it is that they're doing.
Right.
It's not just about what it's given them. It's like they buy into the work.
That's correct.
Yeah. What film, not that you enjoyed working the most on, but what film turned out in a way that you were just like blown away by what you saw on the screen?
Oh, that's interesting. Let's go back to Jerry Maguire.
Yeah.
I was still young. I read the script. Didn't think much of it.
What part?
Show me the money. Show me the money did not jump off the page.
Yeah, probably.
No.
It probably looked cliche, trite when you read it. You're kind of like, this is stupid.
It just didn't. The whole thing. And I knew the sports agent world. I knew, the cliches and that kind of thing and so on and so forth.
So when you read it, what was it? What didn't you like? You just felt like it was
I'm not saying I didn't like it.
What?
It just didn't jump off the page.
It wasn't exciting to you as a project.
Correct. It just didn't. It just didn't it just wasn't a wow thing, right?
Gotcha.
Until I saw it. As soon as I saw it, I was like, "Oh my gosh!"
So even while you're working on it, you're like, "This, it's a job. We're working on a project, but this isn't going to be anything special." Like,
correct.
Okay,
correct. And some jobs I have worked on, and I think, okay, there's something going on here that might be good. We Are Marshall, was a movie with McConaughey that I felt like regardless of how it did in the box office or anything else, like it was a special.
You're gonna be proud of it.
Yeah, that it was like there's something special going on, and that was a little bit of everything. The cast, the director, all of it, the material, obviously, the people that it affected, still affects generationally.
Just the story itself.
The story itself, but that maybe, you're never going to get something like that, a true story like that, especially a tragedy, entirely right. And what you hope is that you can avoid entirely wrong.
Then try to honor the
And that's the word.
Yeah.
And I felt like, boy, I feel like it came fairly close to that. And so that was cool. So you feel good about that. But Jerry Maguire was one of those things that, again, I went. The other one is.
So before you leave the Jerry Maguire, because I'm interested in knowing what happened on the screen that you didn't see or recognize during the filming and the production of the film.
Well, the performances and the chemistry between Cuba and Tom were.
And you just don't pick that up when it's happening as much?
No, I wasn't around it a lot, I mean,
because you were doing your part, but you weren't around during.
They're not right, and they're not working together, right? Like
a lot of that film, they were completely in separate places.
Correct.
So they weren't shooting together and playing off each other. That makes a lot of sense.
Right. It's like, I remember we went all the way out, shot that in Tempe, Arizona, and so I remember hearing. Part of my frustration sometimes, it's not all the time, because again, I'm not wowed, but like I remember being like pissed about like Glenn Fry's playing the GM, and I can't meet him. I can't meet him, because he's playing. He's in an office somewhere else, and I'm shooting the football scenes out in the practice field and in the stadium in Tempe, Arizona. And I'm like, oh, the one guy, of course, here we go, rock and roll, right?
The guy that I really want to meet.
The guy I want to meet, like hang for a second. So, and so when Cuba and Tom were having their scenes they're away from the field sometimes. Not all the time, but you don't pick that up. And then the other thing, and obviously Renee was great. Cameron shooting that movie, the music, all of it, the love story.
And that movie holds up.
It's beautifully shot.
That movie holds up 30 years later.
No doubt.
It holds up.
It changed. Okay, so I'll say this. That movie changed my career. Not because I did it. It's because the movie did so well. Again, I think it was 175, 190 at the box office eventually. Hollywood sat up and said, the sports genre movies are now real.
Those can make money.
They can make money.
Worth investing.
And that's when everything changed for me. That's when Any Given Sunday came. That's when The Replacements came. That's when everything started happening. Right after that, they just started. If they've got 25 movies a year at each studio, they're going, let's make 2 or 3 of them sports movies.
And how many people in the industry are doing what you were doing at the time? Like, how many of you are there?
3 or 4 at the time. That's another reason where I thought I might be able to make a living. I saw that there might be a niche.
Mm-hmm.
I said I might be able to make a living doing this, because I saw there might be a niche. And that's when Eric, so I did. There was a movie being filmed up in Canada. I can't remember what it was. It was a football movie. And again, Tolan Robbins were getting ready to go shoot a baseball movie called Summer Catch. Freddie Prinze Jr., Jessica Biel.
I think I remember that. Yeah.
Baseball, Cape Cod baseball thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, hey, I played baseball. Part of what I saw was I'll starve to death if I just wait around and do football movies. They're only going to do so many of those.
You need to be a sports guy.
Period.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody was that.
Everyone kind of specialized in whatever their little niche was.
Right. And I found out later why, but this is part of the story.
Okay.
So I, hey, I'd love to do baseball. Well, you can't do baseball. You're the football guy. So you take less money, you beg and plead, you get there, you bust your butt.
You prove that you can do baseball.
And you prove that you can do baseball.
Yep.
right? Which
Yep.
I did. So I turned down the more money for do the other football thing or whatever it was to do the baseball. Okay. Which led to, The Rookie, Mr. 3000, the Rookie with Dennis Quaid,
Mhm.
which
Huge Disney.
that
That was
was
a Disney film, right?
Disney
Yeah,
movie,
that was
right?
a huge film.
Which The Rookie led to Miracle. See,
My Miracle movie.
right,
oh my
but you
gosh,
see what I'm
I love
saying?
that
So
movie.
so then, like I said, the Friday Night Lights thing,
Mhm.
I felt like I'd already done that Texas story with Varsity Blues. I'm like, I need to go do basketball. Coach Carter, you can't do basketball. You're the football, baseball guy.
Yeah. You just got to
I
keep.
finally said, "Where's the rule book?"
You're
It's
like,
one of my things. Don't anybody tells you can't do it. It's the old cliche. If you can't do it, I never listened to that. It was like, why not? I played basketball, like I can do this. So I would, and that translated into semi-pro and other basketball projects and Uncle Drew, and other things that I've done and so on and so forth. So that's where I said, okay, maybe I found a career here. I've created a little niche here.
how far in are you at this point? From just years.
After Miracle, when was that? 2004?
Early 2000s.
Right,
I mean,
2003.
10 years.
Yeah, after Miracle, and I tell you why is because when I got asked to do Miracle, I said, which I think, because you like the story and it's cool, and it's that movie itself it was a turning point for me, Eric. And because I was on the set of The Rookie, Mark Chardy and Gordon Gray were a young producers that produced The Rookie for Disney. I think after that, they signed a deal with Disney to produce these things. They said, "Hey, we're getting ready to do Miracle, the story of the 1980 team. Why don't you come do the sports in it?" And I said, the old thing, I don't know the difference between a clothesline and a blue line.
You said that?
Yeah, like, are you kidding me? Like, I can't do this.
You did the other ones though. Why wouldn't you think you could do that one?
No, because I played baseball,
Oh,
football.
you're like, okay, I was familiar with those sports. This is a
Familiar,
sport I have
yeah,
no
like-
familiarity with.
Are
Yeah.
you kidding? Like, okay. First of all, I did not believe this is the greatest sports story in America the last 100 years. I mean, right? They beat Russia, the Soviet Union. Like, this is maybe one of the best sports. Forget the movie.
No,
the story itself.
You're right. I mean, I remember I was probably 12, I don't know, 12 years old. I remember sitting in the family room of my house. My parents didn't watch hockey at all.
Right.
But I remember sitting in there, the entire family watching that game, and the feeling in the room, the feeling of pride in the country when they did something that hadn't been done. And so that everyone said it's impossible. You
That's
cannot
correct.
do that. Like,
And that's my point.
there was the national pride and just the sense of it was just like you said, it was one of the most unique, special moments in sports that's ever occurred.
Right. So therefore it's well known.
Yeah.
So how are we ever emotionally going to get to the point where
Yeah.
we all know Eruzione hits the winning goal.
Yep.
Like, okay, how do we get okay, it's just there's no way we can ever reach that because again, everybody knows, I think is very familiar with the story. Yes, we do biopics all the time, but can it really happen?
I know nothing about film, but
yeah.
the thing that really did that for me, is the way that they dug into each one of those athlete stories.
Right.
And they created, like, you buy into them as a person, and then they showed like how he just grinded them into a unit.
Correct.
Right. So they bring you along on that journey of like suffering and the formation of a team.
Right. So
was that you? Was that
no? So this is my point: is that I'm going no way.
Yeah.
Just read Mark. Just read the script.
Just read it.
So I read the script. I went, oh boy, exactly what you're saying. Amazing. Mike Rich wrote it. Mike, Invincible. Eventually, he got his start on Finding Forrester, one of my favorite movies of all time. Mike wrote I think Secretariat, Invincible, The Rookie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and Mike is one of the best guys and best writers out there. So I read the script. I was like, wow. So I kind of talked to the people on my staff that I work with and so on and so forth, like, you need to do this. So I'm like, well, how in the world am I going to pull this off? I dug in, 3-4 months and learned as much as I could about the sport, hung out with hockey guys, went to practices, learned as much as I possibly could. Finally, I go to Santa Monica for a meeting with the Disney execs. We meet in a big hotel room up in Santa Monica. Kurt Russell's going to be there. Herb Brooks is going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking to myself before we walk in, because we hadn't started shooting. And I'm going, can I back out now?
I don't belong in this room.
Well, I'm getting ready to walk in. I just heard Herb Brooks say, in my mind, I'm thinking Herb Brooks is going to say, let me get this straight.
Yeah.
This is the greatest sports movie. This is the greatest sports story in 100 years. And you hire this guy to be the sports, to tell the story, like, who's never played, who's never, like, the whole thing.
Yep.
And I'm like, and he's right. Like, what
am I doing?
What am I doing? This is not going to be good. And I don't know how I'm going to answer the question or anything like that. And so I swallow, I walk in, everybody's introducing, and, Herb Brooks, you must be Mark Ellis.
Really?
And he starts from the other side of the table.
Okay.
You must be Mark Ellis. Handshake. I'm so glad you took this. You let me know. I'm so glad you're doing this. You let me know if you need anything.
Wow. What did that moment feel
like? Tough. Just, changed everything, because once I did that, and it was the hardest 6 months, maybe part of the hardest 6 months of my life, because I'm like, okay, I'm not going to fail this guy.
Right.
That's the first thing.
The belief that he had in you.
Oh, right there. Like, okay, I'm not failing this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I don't care what I've got to do. And it was so tough. But he was always there, answered phone calls, whatever it was, sat with me and helped me understand what he was trying to do with, the Soviet offense and the Canadian defense. I mean, Eric, it was a tutorial both on the ice and off the ice. And
how much time was he on set? Was he there a lot?
No, he wasn't there a lot, but okay. I got to see him in prep, and I got to talk to him again on the phone and do different things and that kind of thing. And so he was just incredible. And but it was one of the hardest projects. We went up to Vancouver to shoot. I surrounded myself, and everybody said, you're getting ready to have the time of your life. I'm like, why? They said, well, hockey people are the greatest people in the world. Well, they couldn't have been more right. Again, everybody could have laughed me out when I casted the athletes and the players up there in Canada, brought in the American, but in that meeting, I think I kind of won Herb over when I said I think I won after that. I said, guys, I think we were 3 months out, 3 months out, maybe 2 months out of shooting.
Okay.
And I said, guys, I can either cast actors and teach them how to skate,
or
cast hockey players and teach them how to act. But I can tell you, for the 3 or 4 months that I've been working towards this, just my naked, eye, very early, like, these kids that make it to this level, in order for it to look great, you're on frozen water.
Right.
Okay.
You can't
put skates.
Put a guy on a field and let him teach him to run fast. Like, that's these guys. Like, I mean, I grew up in Michigan. I grew up skating on frozen ponds in the middle of winter, like checking people into snowbanks. Skating is hard. Well, like, you can't just throw a guy on skates and teach him to skate.
No, I'm like, these guys were like they had skates in the crib.
Yeah.
Like literally when they were 2-3 years old, it's like they could do that maybe before they could ride a bike. I mean, like, and that was the first time. And Disney's like, remember, I got 18 of those guys.
Yeah.
And they gave me a bunch of money, and I went up and down the East Coast and up into Canada and tried to, and did open casting calls and cut actors that couldn't skate and had to find, a righty or somebody, we wanted the Boston accents. We wanted, all the accents that we could possibly get. So there was
that had to be a ton of work.
Ton of work.
Because actually, that was one of the things that struck me when I've watched that so many times.
Right.
I literally, the last time I watched that, when it was over, I looked up every actor that was a hockey player in that movie, and I went and looked up their bios because I was so interested in how well they did. I was actually wondering, is this like these guys had to have played hockey? Right.
Yeah.
So I went and looked up their bios. I read about who they really were as a person. And I kind of recognized that that's what y'all had done. But the realism, the believability that brought to that movie, because you're sitting there watching that and those guys are freaking skating.
Yeah. So I don't like, for multiple reasons, going to the premiere or going to these red carpet things, primarily because, again, when you finish filming 6-9 months down the road, I've already done 1 or 2, or I'm already working on
other projects.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those guys. So anyway, you go to these premieres and, kind of like it's everybody pats each other on the back and talk about how great we are. And nobody's even seen the thing yet,
Right.
But part of it is the press and all that other stuff that you do and
playing the
game. It's good seeing everybody. And
sometimes
it's the first time you've seen it. Sometimes it's not. But I remember Ross Greenberg, who was running HBO Sports at the time, and they had, remember, I had to look at every game, the Sweden game, the Czech game, the Finland game, because I'm recreating the plays within those real games, right?
Right. And not just games, but games that almost the entire country above a certain age was sitting there mesmerized watching. It's not just some random game that somebody didn't remember that you're trying to like recreate. You're talking about moments in time that
are
frozen in people's mind, and they remember this shot and that shot and this save and that save. Like, huge.
So Ross helped get, he was one of the producers on it, helped get all that footage for us and so on and so forth. And I walked in the premiere and I hadn't seen it. And he said, "This is going to change your life."
He knew.
Yep. Head of HBO Sports. He said, "This is going to change your life." And I had no idea.
Did you
I didn't know
meant?
Good or bad.
Just like, okay.
Well, I didn't know if he meant good, bad. Like, what do you mean? Like, first of all, how many times do you hear that in your life when you walk in?
I've never heard that in my life.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, ever.
It caught me. I mean, literally, it was a moment captured, frozen in time for me, because I didn't really understand what he was saying at the time. And I've never spoken to him about that specifically since. But coming from a dude like that, right? Who doesn't, you get,
that's not something they're going to throw around.
No. Yeah. No, not those type of people. You just don't. Even if you think it, you're not going to say it.
Right.
We just don't, guys don't do that, And so that changed everything, because it gave me the confidence. If I can do this,
I can do anything.
I can do it. I can now I got this.
Yeah.
Gavin O'Connor, who directed that, who did an amazing job. Another tough guy to work with, but brilliant. It's amazing because I've worked with so many. But I think as many great Academy Award winning directors, Ang Lee, Oliver Stone, Cameron Crowe, Christopher Nolan, Gavin O'Connor may have taught me more about story and the importance of it than anybody I had worked with. and maybe still have worked with. I mean, the emphasis for him on story is amazing. And so, you know, you're learning as you go.
The story development in that film was
and Gavin still
it was
it was
epic.
And he demanded that. And every day it was going through layers and layers and layers of story until we could get it and hone in. And up until every take, the last take, if we could pull an inch, one more inch out of the story, we would do it. And so that was just a really, really cool, that was a turning point. And I felt like at that point, you know, things could change.
That's cool. I'm going to have you back on because I had other stuff that I wanted to talk about. That's like future stuff and this and that. But that, I feel like that's a great, that film meant so much to me.
Yeah.
And just the way that you talked about it, like that's a good place to end for today. But man,
I loved it, man. I had a great time.
I'm
this
so
is awesome.
like appreciative of you being here. This was really, really enjoyable for me.
Blast, dude. It's a blast. Thank you for having me. Yeah. And I'd love to come back and talk about the second half at some point.
We're going to do
We'll get into the third and fourth
when
quarter.
I get you in between this thing and whatever you're doing next. You can give me just a brief glimpse. What's on, like, do you have your next project on the horizon already?
I think so. I got the telephone call last week, and
is it something you can talk about or not?
It's, you know what, it's going to segue nicely. Have me back because I think it's going to segue nicely into
perfect.
What's the future of Hollywood? What's the future of streaming? What's the future of storytelling?
That was all on my list, and I'm like, I'm going to be here for 4 hours.
Right.
And so that's what I want to.
Yeah.
We'll
ironically,
that
that's what this looks like it is. It looks like this new studio, like this new storytelling, the new platform, maybe like this is maybe the new thing. And so it's very exciting, very cool. I think the timing's fantastic. I think it's maybe something the world needs a little bit right now. And it'll be fun to talk about later when, you know, maybe I'll have a little bit more reflection on it, but I'd love to come back anytime.
That'd be awesome. All right, brother. Well, I appreciate you being here. I can't wait till that one happens. And we'll chat again in a little bit. Okay.
I look forward to it.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, brother.
You're still here?
Thanks for listening to the Do Not Go Quietly podcast.
It's over.
With Eric Wilson.
Go home. Go.